Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show. This is the Thursday, day 3 of glorious Goodwood preview. I'm your host, George Elek, and I'm joined by two expert tipsters, two of the very best in the game, oddschecker's very own Andy Holding and Rory Delargy. Guys, we spoke yesterday to preview day 1 and day 2. We were talking about the possibility of it being soft ground for day 1. It is currently about 40 minutes to the first race on the Tuesday, day 1 gets underway, and we're seeing heavy in the going, Andy, after a pretty crazy night of rain. So how's that got you your preparations for this week?
I think it actually makes it a lot more easy, doesn't it? Because you can cross off the ones that want fast ground. I mean, we might get a few non-runners along the way, so that's par for the course. But I think a lot of it just becomes a little bit more straightforward and apparent. You're most like, if you've got a whole field of 20 odd horses and all of them want good ground or have acted on good ground, then quite obviously it's going to make life tricky. But I don't mind it when it goes heavy. Actually, my best 2 days at Royal Ascot was when the ground changed. It went heavy because I think I just got more clarity of vision. Whereas, looking at a wide open playing field of 20 odd, 30 odd runner handicaps where everything could win and you didn't know the draw, that was when I struggled. But let's hope that's going to be the same again this week, because at least we know where we stand anyway.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And Rory, this is a preview for Thursday. Are we going to assume that by then it would have dried out a fair bit, or is there more rain on the way?
Well, I think we started assuming that it wouldn't be quite as soft on Tuesday as the going description on Monday, but that the 16 mils of rain they got overnight in about 20 minutes was pretty much unforecast. So I would say make no assumptions, and just check. Again, it seems that the forecast is pretty decent from midweek onwards, but this time of year with thunderstorms around, it's never easy to call. So you've got to keep your options open.
Yeah, so we'll wait and see what is the case in terms of the ground tomorrow and going into Thursday as well. And for Thursday's racing, we are going to preview the first 4 races of the day in detail. Then you've got the Nursery, which is the third last, and then a couple of a maiden fillies race, and then a handicap to finish, which will kind of come under any other business as well. But of course, we've got the Richmond, we've got the Gordon Stakes, and we've got the Nassau Stakes as well. So plenty to get through in this podcast and video. We've already done day 1 and day 2. So if you're watching or listening to this before day 1 or day 2's racing has got underway, that's unlikely for day 1, given it's currently 1:15 on Tuesday. But if you haven't seen day 2 yet, do go and check them out on the oddschecker YouTube channel or on any podcast platform under the oddschecker betting show. Do download the oddschecker app as well before we get underway, so you can see the best prices. These markets are recently reformed just after final deck, so the prices will change pretty quickly. Download the app so you can see the best prices, best place terms as well, bookie offers, free bets, and you can get the very best tipsters in the game straight to the app as well. And these tips every morning around 9 a.m. straight to the app. The first race of the day is the Kinsmen Handicap. The first race where we've got Arian Power is 9-2, Alfredel is 5-1, Patient Dream, King Frankel, and Tarashok all 8-1. Carter 9-1, Dingle, Namoose, and Mr. Excellency all 10-1. A couple of others, Forest Falcon 22-1, Pure Bubbles 33-1, and they take us away with the opener on Thursday.
Yeah, I think these races sort of later in the week, the Thursday, the Friday, or even into the Saturday, are quite good betting races for punters if they're prepared to do the work and prepared to have a little bit of foresight. Because what often happens is that bookmakers have got tissue prices, anti-parish prices on a lot of these races, and they tend to sort of don't adjust them, even though the ground suggests they should, and they kind of leave carrots dangling there for you to sort of scoop up if you're on the ball. There's a couple of horses in this race I do think potentially could be overpriced. I think Tarashok is definitely one of them. I do like this horse. I put him up last time out when he won a maiden at Nottingham, because he come out of that very good contest behind Baid the time before at Leicester. It was a race that I highlighted on my column quite a few times and a few social media and media platforms that I've been on. The time figure that Bayer did that day back in June was quite extraordinary, and his back end sectionals were like very much the wow factor. So I kind of upgraded any horse that went with William Haggis's charge, and Tarashuk was one of them. The race subsequently has worked out as well as I thought it would. The second, the third, the fourth, including Charashok as well, the fifth, has won since. And we've seen Baid obviously make up into a horse now befitting of his 119 rating with a smooth victory at Newmarket. The ground's the only slight issue. He's by Maxios, so I think that's probably going to make him okay on easy ground. I don't think it'll probably be heavy by Thursday. I think it might dry out by then, although that can't be certain. But I do think he's the best handicapped horse in the field of 86. I'll be surprised if he doesn't leave that mark behind sooner rather than later. So he would be my number one choice. And I think you've definitely got to give Patient Dream some kind of shout, because he will definitely like the conditions, as he proved when he beat Sarvan last time out at Windsor. Sarvan's quite a useful mid-range 0 to 85, 0 to 90 handicapper trained by George Scott, and he put him away ultimately. I thought quite snugly at Windsor. I think 1.25 miles is just about his trip. He has got form over shorter, but he showed last time and he stayed that 1.25 miles well on soft. So those would be the two I'd be looking at, but mainly Tarashok. I think his maiden form suggests that he's not only very good, but he has the potential to be even better.
Tarashok 8-1 pretty much across the board. Patient Dream the same price.
Big price, 8-1.
With Paddy Power Hills and Betfair Sportsbook, both horses they're 8-1. But Andy giving the real nod there, I think, to William Haggis's Tarashok. Rory?
I'm a fan of Patient Dream here. Andy's given him a mention already. Only up £3 for that win last time out, which is a solid piece of form. I thought he should have won at Epsom the time before that. I was with him that day, and he was very heavily backed, and he just seemed to lose his pitch at an important point of that race before plugging on. And that's a race that King Frankel was in as well, and he'd obviously be interesting from a handicapping point of view here. But Patient Dream won last time out, gone up £3 for it. Ray Dawson on board, taking the £3 straight off again, and he's riding tremendously well this season. Ray Dawson got an awful lot of confidence, really believes in what he's doing, and he's been given a second chance, and he's very much riding like that. And I think that's a very good jockey booking for Rafe Beckett here. So he'd be top of my list. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see King Frankel bounce back after a poor run at Newmarket. He finished last there on quick ground, but all his best form is with some ease in the ground. So I could see King Frankel bouncing back. He doesn't want to get too far behind here. The one thing about soft ground at Goodwood makes it harder to come from behind, because they will tend to move off the rail, and horses towards the front essentially pick their ground. And if you're coming from the rear, you've got to move wide of the leaders or move up the inside of the leaders, and the chances are that you end up on worse ground. So it's not the ideal scenario on soft ground trying to come from behind at Goodwood, but so that would be the worry with King Frankel, given that he got behind it at Epsom, which is a similar sort of track. But yeah, I'd be happy to stick with Patient Dream.
So Patient Dream, the one you are siding with, 8-1, as I said, positive mentions from both Andy and from Rory. We'll go on to the second race of the day, the Unibet Richmond Stakes, where we have Asymmetric is the 5-2 favourite ahead of Gabas at 7-2, Perfect Power 4-1, Ebro River 6-1, Qatar 11-1, Coonan 12-1, Giza Sub is 14-1. Just the 7 runners as it stands, and given some issues with the ground today and the amount of non-runners we've had, it's fair to say that could cut up even further. But Andy, who do you fancy to go well in the Richmond?
I think we got the right favourite here with Asymmetric. As I mentioned in a podcast we did on the Monday for the Tuesday, I think that July Stakes is very much the best race. Certainly on the figures anyway, on the time figures that we've got. Lucille, unfortunately, is not able to fly the flag for that race as predicted, because the ground's gone probably just away from him. We do get half a chance to see how it'll work out, because Eldrick Jones, who was 5th at Newmarket, runs and still represents that form line. So let's see how he goes. But as it stands, I think Asymmetric is the one. He undercut in the ground the time before. Obviously not as bad as what he's likely to encounter on Thursday. But he's a course and distance winner. He's already proven that he doesn't mind going downhill. And he quickened up really well to win that day when he won. He got carried over on the right-hand side of the track and still had the qualities to win. I just like him. He's just a likeable horse. He gives himself a chance as well, because he's not overly exuberant early on. He races behind the bridle a little bit, which I quite like. You don't want 2-year-olds pulling too hard and expending energy in this ground. So I think that's another important point to make. We just don't know whether the likes of Perfect Power, Gubas, who've got really good top-class form over 5 furlongs on fast ground, will handle these conditions. That's a problem with those two. Ebro River definitely been by Galileo Gold, will appreciate the ground. I've put him up a couple of times this season when the ground's been soft because of his size stats. So I think he comes back into the equation. And I think Qatar is a nice horse as well. He ran okay at Ascot when he was 7th in the Coventry, but I think his performance at Newbury suggested he'd left that form behind in no uncertain terms. I thought that race, the Rose Bowl at Newbury today, was very, very hot. I put up one of Ian Williams's, and he ran right up to his best form at the first 3 homes, just did him for pace. So he's another major contender. I think he's overpriced. But with it, like I said, with the likelihood of the ground being unknown for perfect power and Gubbas, I'd probably stick with him asymmetric because of his course and distance form and his ability to quicken, with a favourable mention of Ebro River back on his favoured surface.
Asymmetric 5-2, Ebro River 6-1, and Couture, the other one you mentioned there, Andy, 11-1 with Hills and Mansion Bet. That 5-2 is with every bookmaker up on the oddschecker grid and on the app too. Rory, do you agree with Andy that asymmetric, the likely winner, the right favourite?
He's the right favourite, and I know Andy's very, very sweet on the July Stakes. I would be inclined to back Ebro River at the prices here. You might have slight concerns about the way he sort of carried his head there at Newmarket, but he ended up getting forced widest of all, and obviously racing towards the centre of the track was a benefit. But he's just got shot a little bit wider than everything else, and there were 4 of them in line with 50 yards to run. He just got beaten a length behind asymmetric there. He does, he's a more racing. Asymmetric is on paper the one more likely to improve. But I think, as Andy says, I think the key to Ebro River is the grind. I didn't think he looked very happy on the ground at Newmarket. He didn't move very well on the last furlong. And I think he'd be a lot happier getting back on soft ground here. He was very impressive in the National Stakes at Sandown. He hasn't kept a straight path in his races. But as we've seen before, as we saw with asymmetric, the drifting off to your right at Goodwood is not necessarily a bad thing. At times, depending what the ground is like. I mean, you can have scenarios where the ground is better towards the stands rail, and if you do start drifting right, you're drifting onto the worst of the ground. But I've seen plenty of horses win races at Goodwood going sideways in the last furlong. So the fact that he doesn't keep a straight path is not necessarily a massive disadvantage here. And he's looked a very good horse on soft ground. Obviously, he's been beaten in his last couple of starts, but he's gone under by reasonably fine margins, stepping up to 6 furlongs the last twice. He probably wouldn't be the strongest there at 6 furlongs at this stage. Obviously, his best performance arguably coming when winning the National Stakes over 5. But the sharp 6 here will suit him better, I think, than either Ascot or Newmarket. And the key is probably the ground. So he does have to improve a little bit to reverse form with asymmetric. And looking at the pair of them on paper, asymmetric looks the likeliest improver. But I think the price on Ebro River will hold up. And I think you might end up even getting a bit better than 6-1, and that appeals to me.
6-1 at the moment, Ebro River for Hugo Palmer, ridden by James Doyle. Sky Bet 6-1, Paddy 6-1, and Betfair Sportsbook 6-1 as well. Onto the 3 o'clock, the third race of the day, the Thursday at Glorious Goodwood. It's the John Pearce Racing Gordon Stakes, raced over, I think, mile 4. And Wordsworth is the favourite at 11-4. Yabir 4-1. Third Rail 9-2. Salukan 8-1. Youth Spirit 9-1. 10-1 Ottoman Empire. Elias 12-1. And Bellocchio 20-1 as well. 8 runners. So you're getting your 3 places as it stands. Rory, how do you see this as a betting heat in the 3 o'clock?
It's pretty tight on the ratings. I think Wordsworth comes out just the best in terms of official figures, but I'd be a little concerned about him on genuinely soft ground. If it turns out good to soft on the day, then I'd imagine he'd be pretty strong in the betting. He's got Group 1 placed form, and Aiden's not throwing huge numbers of horses here, so he'll be popular. But if it was genuinely soft, I'd be concerned about him. And I'm inclined, given he's proven on soft ground here, I'd be inclined to stick with Yabir, who I thought looked very promising in the classic trial at Sandown, which has worked out really well. He then looked an absolute pig at Chester, and then he was second in the Cocked Hat Stakes which is proven to be very decent form. It looked okay at the time. It looked a lot better when Lone Eagle went to the Curragh. And he's been gelded and just looked completely different horse last time out when winning the Bahrain Trophy at Newmarket. That's not a race to get massively carried away with. But I think the thing about Yabir was he looked like he had all the talent in the world early in the season, but not the application. And being gelded seems to have straightened him out. That was a career best last time out. You can argue that the race was run to suit him. But in fairness, I just thought he looked like he was applying himself for the first time properly. And the collateral form of his runs early in the season is very strong. And if the gelding, as appears to be the case, has cured him of his quirks, then I think he'd be hard to beat.
Yabir, the one for Rory, hard to beat, 4-1 with most firms at the moment. Andy?
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with most of what Rory said there. I'm now a believer in Yabir because he beat a horse called Mandub, a horse I've got a huge amount of time and respect for. I put up Mandub as a dangerous floater, if you like, in the Bahrain Trophy. And to be fair, Yabir made him look not second rate, but he beat him quite comfortably. The time figure was pretty healthy. They went a reasonable gallop that day. I think it was Gear Up that made the run in. But yeah, I was also very impressed by the way that Yabir got his head down, and that gelding operation seemed to have worked. He was a good second behind Lone Eagle at this track. Time before, he won't mind a bit of cutting the ground. It's more the fact that Charlie Appleby's just got a dearth of top class 3-year-olds this season. I mean, this is the season of all seasons, isn't it, for Charlie? I mean, that was he had the Derby winner with Adio, and of course the King George winner now. He's also got Hurricane Lane and horses like Kamari and Yabir now, of course, and lots of other nice 3-year-olds just bubbling under the surface. So I think if you were to follow Charlie Appleby blind in all the major middle distance 3-year-old races, you wouldn't be going too far wrong. And I think at 4-1, he definitely represents some value here. I think 4-1 each way, if all 8 runners go to post, would be a cracking position to be in. I wouldn't be totally dismissive or prepared to write off Third Realm just yet. For one reason or another, I don't think he quite fired or was at his best at Epsom behind Adair in the Derby, because he'd beaten the Derby winner, I thought, fairly readily at Lingfield the time before, showing a really good turn of foot to overpower Charlie Appleby's horse. Whether it was a slightly quicker ground at Epsom, I don't know, but you'd forgive any horse one slightly below par run. And let's face it, the Derby's worked out really well, as we've seen with Adir, Hurricane Lane and Bolshoi Ballet, all winning top class races subsequently. So I do think he's a player of sorts, so he's certainly back into the equation. So yeah, I'd be with Rory here. I'm not sure whether Rory is in each way better at 4-1 with an account closing kind of potential with that kind of bet,
and also with 48 hours to hold on to your 8 runners as well.
Exactly, yeah. But we could sneak him in some sneaky each way doubles and still claim that kind of thievery. Or if you was to split your bet and perhaps instead of having a fiver each way, you'd have a fiver on Yabir and a fiver on Third Realm as an alternative exotic bet.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, Yabir, as I say, at the moment you're getting 4-1 3 places, but given we're off the final decks, if 1 or 2 do come out, you're only going to get your 2 places afterwards, and probably a shorter price anyway as well. But Yabir, the dual selection for Andy and for Rory, and certainly Andy will look pretty clever if 8 do go to post on Thursday. Third Realm, the other one Andy gives a favourable mention for, is 9-2 standout with Bet365. Onto the Nassau, where there are just 6 runners. Adaria is the 15-8 favourite. Joan of Arc 5-2. Lady Bowthorpe 3-1. Empress Josephine 10-1. Zadaya 11-1, and Technique 33-1. So another trappy affair, this Andy, with 3 certainly market principles at the top end. So who do you fancy who do you fancy the moment to be the play?
Yeah, a lot of bookmaker friendly races on there. 7 runners, not really for us each way backers that we tend to scorn upon these races. I think the one I'd be with here is Ordaria, who for me has probably got the strongest form. You could probably handpick any of her runs really in the last 12 months to say, well, that's the best form. Personally, I think the the run in the Prix de l'Opera is the pick. When she was a creditable third to that very, very good mare of or filly of Dermot Wells, Tarnawa. And there was a whole host of quality horses in and around her that day. Another key factor to her is that she's got Goodwood form, something that the others in the field can't boast. I've touched upon quite a few times in the podcast horses that have run well in victory or even defeat at this track, having maybe some kind of tactical advantage because they've been around here. And I'd certainly have a healthy respect to the 3-year-olds, particularly Joan of Arc, of course. Is representative of top quality 3-year-old classic form this season. She's obviously going to be a thorn in the side to favourite backers here, but I'd go with Oddaria on several counts. Her ability down the ground for one, her Group 1 Lopra form from last year and course form, all making her quite a tempting proposition, albeit the price isn't that great.
Daria, the one there for Andy, the favourite, 15-8, best price as it stands. That is with, I think it was Sky Bet, with Sky Bet at the moment. Rory?
I couldn't agree more, to be honest. I couldn't see past Daria here. It's a good race. I mean, I'm not suggesting it's a terrible Nassau Stakes, but she's got ticks in all the boxes really here. She handles the track. She's at home in heavy ground. She's got that little bit of extra class compared to her rivals. There are one or two who are open to improvement. Either of the O'Brien fillies could step forward. We've seen that often enough. But Adaria's got really, really solid form. She ran an absolute cracker on firm ground on her return to action. She won't mind what the going is here. And I think she is a bit of a class act. So very hard to beat.
Daria, hard to beat. Double thumbs up from Rory and Andy there in the Nassau 15-8 best price. As I said, we've got through the 4 first races there in record time. So I think we need to talk about the nursery here. Otherwise, give the people what they want and give them the content that they need. So we've got the nursery now, the 7 furlong nursery, the 410. Abracadabra is the 4-1 favourite. Highland Premier 13-2. Aswan 7-1 alongside Adjuvant. Robasta 8-1. Mayfair Stroll 9-1. South Audley 10-1. 12-1 Bar 15. Run as it stands. Sky Bet sticking their neck out with 5 places at the moment. A couple of others, Paddy's and Hills, both 4, and Unibet as well, I should say. And Betfred and Betway. Andy, have you managed to have a look at the nursery? I feel like I may have dropped you in the deep end here.
No, not at all. No. I do quite a lot of work on the 2 races, particularly the maidens, and that all builds up to these kind of events sooner rather than later. My recollection of this race, Rory might put me right on this, is that Richard Hannon and Andrew Balding tend to do quite well in these kind of events, particularly at this track. I'd be very keen on Ard Bracken. Sorry, she was run up to that nice horse of Jonathan Thady Gosden's second start in Spiral, who made light work of her field at Ascot on over the weekend. I think she could be group class. In fact, I think she's definitely group class. And then she went back to the July course and won, I thought, with a bit up her sleeve the next time. The likable thing about her is she's got plenty of scope. If you look at her as a physical specimen, she carries quite a lot of body about her, very masculine looking filly. That gives me some kind of hope that she might handle the ground because she's quite strong. I don't know that for definite because she's only raced on a fast surface up to now, so I'm a little bit guessing. So she's definitely shortlist material, and I'd be more than happy to keep Robasta on my side as well. His time figure when he won at Ascot last time out was very healthy, and he's got form behind Go Bears Go early on in the season, and we've seen him go on to pattern glory at the Curragh. I'd be less convinced with him with regards to 7 furlong trip than I would be Ard Bracken. So I'd probably have more on Ard Bracken than I would Robasta, but I think Robasta's certainly worth sticking in some kind of sort of permutations. So yeah, those will be my 2 against the field, the 2 from the Hannon and Balding camp.
Robasta 8-1 pretty much across the board. Ard Bracken 4-1 best price. That's with William Hill, who are standout price. Most firms going 3-1. So if you're quick, you can get that 4s with Hills. Rory?
The one that took my eye here straight away was Adjuvant for Michael Bell. Won a soft ground novice over 7 furlongs at Salisbury last time out in decent style. slightly stiffer 7 than the 7 at Goodwood, which would be the slight concern, because I think Adjuvant, a son of New Bay, will stay further than 7 furlongs. So there's a marginal concern about the trip, but if the ground is still very testing, then that will offset that to a degree. Won both his starts, so able to get into Nursery straight away on that basis. Both of them are coming softish ground. He's found plenty for pressure both times. Ryan Moore booked for Michael Bell, rather an unusual booking for the stable, but it suggests that he means business. And he's drawn in stall 1, which I try not to overplay the inside stall here, but certainly as long as the ground's not as bad as it is now, when they're going sort of good to soft, it's definitely an advantage over 7 furlongs to be drawn pretty low. So stall 1 is definitely not a bad thing. And the only thing is he's clearly not going to lead in this race. So he's going to be coming from behind. So the only question is what kind of route Ryan Moore gets through. But as I was saying on our day 1 preview, when Ryan Moore is riding well, he rides Goodwood better than anyone. So hopefully he can pick his way through.
Well, Rory, just while we're talking about the draw, and it's come to my mind here. What we haven't discussed is the possibility of the jockeys coming across towards the stand side rail.
Yes.
Whether that'll be played out on the first day and then the dynamics of the rest of the week kind of follow suit. Do you think that'll be the case for day 1, or are we just let it ride and see what happens? They
definitely will at some stage. You might get one of those scenarios where I always get the impression that when the jockeys go into the weighing room at the first place, there's a sign on the wall saying you will go here in race 1, and then in race 2 it'll say, in race 2 you'll go here. Because I see some races where the jockeys all go to the far side of the track, or most of them do, and the winner is drawn on that side. And the next race, despite the fact that it looks like that's an advantage, they all go the other side. And it's almost like, they've opened an envelope saying, don't be doing that. And it can be a bit of a head scratcher at times. So it may well be that today, when the jockeys are feeling their way around a little bit, there will be different routes taken in different races on the round course. But when there's heavy on the going description, I think the chances are that they will be tacking across to the middle / stand side in most of those races. Whereas when the going's no worse than soft, I think in the early races at the very least, the jockeys tend to stick to the far side rail. But when it gets very testing, there is always an advantage to race more towards the stand side. So I'm sure they'll do that. We've seen it in the Sussex Stakes a few years ago, and there was a big turn up on that when they've all come right across to the stands rail, and the favourite, despite the fact there only were 5 runners in the race, got no run at all. And that was Ribchester. So yeah, I think that will happen today. If it dries out later in the week, then I think it's less and less likely to happen.
Yeah.
But we will see it early on. And I think the most important thing then isn't the draw. The most important thing where the field are going to tack across to the opposite rail is the one they'd normally race on. It's who can take a good position. It's going to be the leader coming into the straight who will make that decision. And that can be absolutely crucial. The first horse to get to the best of the ground can be at a big advantage. So it doesn't really matter if you've got a good draw if you're coming from behind, because you'll be a hostage to fortune. You'll be following others. And it's those who've got the early pace. So I'm, knowing the ground's going to be very soft for the first 2 days will change my view a little bit on horses that I didn't like drawn wide, if I think they've got the toe to do it, especially with non-runners making the field smaller as well.
Interesting stuff there from Rory. We've got 2 more races just to touch on the third day of Glorious Goodwood. No prices out for either as it stands, but we'll touch on them in case there's any horses you guys just want to flag up. We've got the 7 furlong Fillies Maiden in the 4:45, and then the 5 furlong handicap to finish as well, with 16 entered as it stands at the moment. Andy, any that you're looking out for at the moment?
Yeah, if I was to roll the clock back and somebody had asked me on, say, Saturday, Sunday, what's your nap of the meeting for Goodwood, I wouldn't have hesitated in saying Twilight Calls. But at time of recording, it's heavy, soft in places. We don't know what the ground's going to be like on Thursday. Look, if it dries out and it's not too bad and there's a nice trip up the Sansoy rails, then I'd still want him on my mind, because I do think this horse is probably one of the nicest horses I've seen all season. I think they finally worked out that he wants 5 furlongs. He kept travelling up, not quite getting home over 6. Looked a class horse all the way through. And that victory at Newmarket the other day when he beat the older horses, goodness me! I mean, when he came there, it looks as if he just joined in. His back end split. I still can't believe he did 32-3. Did which is the last time I got a horse doing 32 and change at Newmarket was Calix when he won on his. I think it was his debut or his second start before he won at Royal Ascot. So we're talking. This is a horse right out the top draw. He's absolutely 100% guaranteed pattern horse. This is all day long. I haven't got any question of nominating him as a future group horse. He'll win off 95. Standing on his head. I mean, he's just different gear to this lot. But the ground's the only unknown. He's got on good to soft on debut. I remember looking at his debut run when he travelled up really well beyond Cairngorms, but he didn't get home that day over 6. But so yeah, if it was to dry and it was no worse than, let's say, good to soft on Thursday, I'd still be looking to push my chips in on him. I think he's a very talented horse. I think whatever happens, look, he's one for the viewers to keep on their side for the rest of the season. Whatever happens to him at Goodwood, he might not run, but he's a special talent over 5 furlongs.
One for the notebook there, Twilight Calls, that is entered to run in the 5:20 on Thursday. Rory, any for you in those last 2 races?
I'll actually look at the Fillies Maiden. Again, Andy's hoping that the ground's not too soft for Twilight Calls, who's clearly very interesting, and I'm not going to suggest one against him there. But if it is on the soft side, still very much on the soft side for that Fillies Maiden, I thought there's a newcomer in there who is very much bred to be smart and bred to handle the ground as well. Rafe Beckett's Shout Out, ridden by Oisin Murphy. She is a half-sister to a couple of horses, Afraid of Nothing and Twisted Reality, who both won on very soft ground. She's daughter of Havana Gold. Rafe Beckett's his colts tend to need a run first time out. His fillies tend to be more likely to be ready. She's nicely drawn in stall 5. You don't want to be stuck too wide in a maiden fillies race over 7 furlongs here, and there's 18 runners declared for it. They won't all stand their ground, but stall 5 is a nice place to be. Oisin Murphy riding out of his skin at the moment. I suspect she'll be ready for this as well. So I thought Shout Out was very interesting on paper. Obviously, no prices there. She could be 2 to 1 or 20 to 1. I haven't a clue, but she's definitely
another notebook
one.
Course, I guess.
Sorry.
Another notebook course, another one. Just
Yeah, I mean, she's certainly on this sort of ground. She's bred to handle it, and plenty of them aren't.
She's got an entry tomorrow at Leicester as well with Kieran.
Oh yes, that's a very good point. She's already. I've only just noticed that now. So she's engaged at Leicester. She's liable to run there unless they pull her out.
Either way, have a look at Leicester. Maybe you come here for a Goodwood podcast, you might get a winner at Leicester. That's what we're all about. Thank you to both Andy and Rory for giving us their thoughts here. We'll be recording the last 2 days later on in the week, so do check out the Oddschecker YouTube channel and please subscribe to it for those previews. Plenty of other content and feature content going up on the Oddschecker YouTube channel fairly soon as well. You can find all of the previews as podcasts and the Oddschecker betting show on any podcast provider as well. Do download the Oddschecker app for all the best prices. It's massive differences in these prices and you've got to make sure you're getting the best you can get. So do download the Oddschecker app for that. And best place terms, bookie offers, free bets, and plenty of other bits and bobs as well, including Andy's tips straight to the app at about 9 a.m. every morning of racing, not just for Goodwood, but throughout the year. Hope you've enjoyed the podcast and video. Please do join us for day 4 and 5, or go back and watch day 2 if it's not too late as well. Hopefully a few winners in day 1 and day 2 as well. But please do enjoy the racing and please gamble responsibly.